some of the plumbing and some of the electrical, I did myself. I didn't know how to do almost anything. And I just, hey, congratulations, you're going to learn today, YouTube University. And that's what I did. I'll go off on a slight tangent here. I hate when people say they can't do something. You're making an excuse for yourself. Like, let's call it what it is and be honest. Like, there is no reason in the age of social media that you cannot figure out how to do something. You're choosing to avoid really difficult problems because it's going to be super uncomfortable figuring it out. Welcome to another episode of Straight Up Chicago Investor Podcast. I'm your guest, Sean Douglas, and with me, as always, is your host, Tom and Mark.
Nailed it.
Second shot. I like it.
First one you came in flat, and second one just poof. That was good.
No, I like it.
Banged it out.
Yeah, man. This is one of my favorite episodes. This is good.
Man, that time flew by. Like I actually was like laughing out of control a couple of times in this show. Like it was, those stories are great, and the way he delivers his story too is definitely an entertaining episode.
Yeah, this is one if you're looking to get started. Two, if you're having any struggles, or three, even if you've been around for a while. Like it's all relative. I think we want to point out a few things before we jump into it. Like I'll preface saying, so I don't think we advocate for some of these decisions. I think looking back at them, it's kind of funny and it's awesome. But it just shows like you could almost grind your way out of anything, right? It's always the mentality when my back's against the wall, like you find a way to grind it out, right? Like there's always some sort of way out.
Yeah, and he definitely goes over a couple of those moments here in the show.
Yeah, man, it's a couple of them. I thought we were getting one or two. So for our investors too, if you like this show, we still have on the website the investor stories. It's a resource tab of just investments that have gone wrong that we collected that people were humble enough to share with us. So if you're looking at that, you might find an answer to the problem you're in, right? Like if you're dealing with the city or dealing with something. But two, it shows that you could survive some of these things.
I republished in a blog I forget his name, Joe. He had the tenant
stole my car.
Yeah, tenant stole his car. So I republished that recently, and I got a lot of good traction. So
yep. All right. So with that, what's our housing priority tip of the week?
All right, housing priority tip. We're going to talk about like this a little bit, but I want you to keep this in mind. When you're working in a city or a municipality that has rental license, that means they're going to be coming into your building once, twice a year, and they're going to see everything. And they're getting sharper and sharper, and they're calling out more and more. And now, in cities where you have rental license, like you can't get away without getting a permit for a hot water heater. You used to be able to swap it out. Now when they come, they see the brand new copper, they get you for it. So keep that in mind. A lot of people will knock on Chicago, but a lot of times you buy something in Chicago, the inspector never goes in your place unless you get in trouble and they call 311 and all that stuff. But think about the city you're investing in and the things you're doing if they're going to be coming in there. So that includes like HVAC, if you're replacing that. Even in Glendale Heights, we get our chops busted for just recessed cans. If all of a sudden there's recessed cans in there, even if our clients inherited it, they'll still like, we don't have it on record. You got a permit here. So they'll make you backtrack and get it permit and get it inspected.
Man, yeah, that's a lot. So it's not in your spreadsheet or however you're analyzing this. It's not just the dollar amount. It's all the potential work that could happen, right? You've just opened up the box.
Yeah, in these suburbs, like everything, for GFCIs and making sure all that's taken care of. And the problem you run into is, most of us even listening, probably not me, can really change your GFCI yourself. But once they call you out for it, you have to get a permit for it. So now all of a sudden you got to get that contractor that's licensed, not your buddy that's kind of a jack of all trades. He has to go put his license up and to change that out. So, yeah, no, you know what? The dollar amount is not always crazy, but it's just the aggravation. We get hired a lot of times just because people get themselves in these pickles and we got to get them out of it. But we'll talk about it today, a place like Blue Island, it's just mentally tasking to have to jump through the hoops for them.
Yeah. All right. So let's get into the episode. All right. Our guest today, great story, has persevered through a ton. He's a house hacker. He's got his inspection. He's an inspector. He's got his license there, and he's he's a broker with the Axon Group. So without further ado, let's jump in. Sean, welcome to the underground. How you doing?
Good, man. How about yourself?
We're excited to have you. So first off, thank you to Mike Scanlon and Jake Foodman for making the introduction. We have a great house hacking story. We got a lot to get into. Before that, though, just talk about life as a teenager. What was teenage Sean like?
He was pretty aggressive, pretty hostile, liked to pick fights, that kind of stuff. So I had a rough upbringing, but as a general rule, I think it laid a really solid foundation for future Sean.
Got it. So what, you're 17, 18 years old. Did you know what you wanted to do at that point? Or is it just day to day?
Literally day to day. I had no idea, no guidance, no overall principle, nothing, zero.
Okay. So high school ends. What happens? You go off to college for a year or two?
So yeah, I went to community college because I basically had no idea what I wanted to do. And then I got introduced to neuroscience at that time, got really interested in it, and went to Southern Illinois Carbondale for I think like a year, and ended up dropping out to take care of my grandmother. She got diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So I made the decision to walk away from any career that I could have had in the medical field to take care of my grandmother before she passed away.
Okay, so you go back, and so you head back, and you're from the South Burbs, correct?
Yeah.
All right, so we head back home, no plan. At some point we fast forward and real estate gets involved here to help bridge that gap.
So I spent basically my entire career in automotive. I bounced around doing a bunch of different things. So everything from like being a service rep to being a salesperson to being in management. And then towards the end of my career, being a fixer and like just doing contract work in automotive, helping people turn around their business kind of thing. I didn't really have an overarching goal even as I progressed through my career. I didn't really have guidance. It was just like, what's the next step to make more money? And that was like really all I focused on.
Was it ever about more money, or was it just like getting enough to live on?
It was about like me not having like good habits, right? Like I like to race, so cars are expensive. Mm-hmm. So if I can make more money, I can do more stuff to my car. Okay. It was never like I can make more money and then invest it and build something. I think though, if I could expand a little bit, deeply speaking, I always had the urge to work for myself, but I didn't really understand it until I got some like context for it as I got, a little bit older and talked to a few more entrepreneurs and actually really understood what it was about. That was like a really clarifying moment for me.
Yeah. Going backwards though, like out of your group, was there anyone, is this one of those situations where this is how everyone in the group thinks, right? Mm-hmm. We all have, you kind of end up being like your friends, right? For the most part. So there's no one there saying like, oh, by the way, you should invest. You should do this. Or no one else is doing it. You're like, oh shit, this guy's doing it. I could do it too.
Yeah. No, nobody really had financial literacy growing up. Not me, not like the kids around me. Not really, I would say almost anyone in my family really either. And then obviously like I got sober before I was legally able to drink. So that was like, another step where like I wanted to correct bad behavior, and I had the ability and the knowledge to know that it was bad, but it was really difficult for me to correct it because I didn't have like a guiding point. And so that was like one of those hinge points in my life where once I made the decision to get sober and I stayed sober, I had to lose a lot of my friends during that time. But that was a really clarifying moment for me that set the groundwork of like, you can literally do anything if you set your mind to it.
I don't want to gloss over that because that's huge. Like to have that much ability to self-reflect at such a young age. Hell, there's still things that I'm realizing now that like, wow, I was horrible. Like, why do I do that? Like, but man, like that's huge. You're able to do that. And especially at that age, because there's the social pressures. You said you went through friends. Like there's people that don't want to stop drinking now because they'll lose their friends at 35. Like it's man, like that's just kudos to like the rest we're going to talk about today. Because that's very unique in itself. So
appreciate that.
Yeah. All right. So you're working these jobs. What happens next, right? At some point, you end up with a house that you did not expect.
Yeah, 100%. So backtrack a little bit. So I was working for a pretty large company as a service manager, and I was playing around in the stock market, and that was kind of like my first dipping the toe into like financial literacy. And I made some okay money in like a couple years. I took an account from like $7,000 to like 35, and I ran it up to 96, made some poor decisions, and it went back down to 40. And that was right before I inherited the house. And so when that happened, it was kind of like a magnifying moment for me of like that 4K, because I wanted the 100K in my account. I wanted that big 6-figure. That was the defining moment for me of like, your greed caused you to lose 50K. That's your fault. Don't do it again. And like, I just think in my head, lessons learned in blood and money are lessons learned forever. That was where it started before I inherited it.
DraftKings does not want to hear that from you. Their whole model is chasing that Sunday night game, baby.
Yeah, for sure. Well, that's again more self-reflection. What attracted you to the stock market? I guess
So honestly, it was just YouTube. Over time, like I met a guy who I used to street race with. I won't mention any names, but he was a very successful trader. His net worth was in seven figures. And at the time, all of us were mostly like, kids, just, we made good money and we threw it right at the car. Like none of us really had hindsight. We didn't have goals and stuff like that. And he was always tell us like, dude, like, you should really think about like investing in the market or like learning how to trade. Like you can make good money. And it's like, yeah, but that requires thought and effort. And like, I don't want to do that.
How do we go from 7 to like 90 though? That's a big jump. Like I don't want to gloss over that either.
Yeah.
Insider trading, right?
Huh?
Insider trading?
Yeah, there you go.
Shame.
We are
Shame.
live.
But yeah, so like basically I was just I was like very maniacally focused. One thing that like I will give myself credit for is when I decide that like, hey, this is the singular thing I'm gonna do, that is the singular thing that I focus on. So I stopped street racing completely. I sold the car, I sold my motorcycle, and I walked away completely. And when I did that, I made the decision like, this is gonna be my new thing. Like I would borderline on saying it was an addiction because I would look at it literally every single day, probably 6 to 12 times a day, which I learned was unhealthy, obviously. But at the time, that focus and like the consumption of my knowledge was just, I was voracious. Like anything that I could learn about it, that's all I focused on. So that's kind of how I made that jump. And also I played options. So.
Oh, there you go. All right. So that's down. You have 40K. Mm-hmm. And you end up inheriting your grandmother's house. Talk to us about this.
Yeah. So in 2016, my grandmother died. And in 2019, my grandfather passed away. And nobody expected me to get the house. Not my mom, not my uncle, not his kids, not me, like no one. I think the reason, if I could speculate, my grandfather gave it to me is because I was always around them. Like I grew up literally like probably 6 or 8 blocks from their house. So I could walk there. And so like, the school was pretty close too. I was very involved with my grandparents from a very young age. My grandfather's like old school Polish, ex-military, like everything is regimented. So like the discipline that I had literally just came from him enforcing that. And I think over time when he would ask me, cut the grass, fix the gutters, do the roof, that kind of thing, I think over time he just made the decision that he wanted to give me the house because the rest of the family were going to get all of his other assets and he wanted to give something to me as like a thank you.
Yep. All right. Doesn't go too well with the fam though, right?
No, it went over about as well as you might think it will. So the other side of my family, the uncle's side, they ended up breaking into the house. They stole probably 10 grand, could been more, could been less. We talked to the police and the police basically told us, hey, congratulations, it's a family matter. And I'm like, well, like they stole more than 10 grand. Like there's a lot of stuff they stole, like very expensive. Like they stole a $3,500 lawnmower among other things, right? So it's like not a small, like, they took some china, right? And the cops literally were like, no, oh well, kind of just is what it is. And so, it was that was a stark defining moment for me. And funny enough, I actually told my mother I was concerned about that happening, and I switched the locks literally less than a week before it happened, and he knew about an access panel in the house. That was how he got in.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Just that's crazy. At least they didn't steal the copper. That's what I was thinking when you were saying that. So I'd love to hear the mindset. I've never been in a situation where I've received something unknowingly, call it 100, 200,000, whatever the value might be, like overnight. Like that had to be like an amazing feeling. I would love to just kind of hear what went through your mind there. I've lost 50 grand overnight, but I've never gained it.
Yeah. It was kind of, it was like, I didn't really know how to process it, to be honest. It was out of the blue, and it was like, I could tell that was like my grandfather saying like, thanks kid, you did all right. And so like I was super grateful, but I also like, because I didn't really have the financial literacy, I didn't really understand, like, I'm like, okay, cool, this is a house, but like, how do I leverage this? Like I understood from the stock market, like principles of leverage, but it's like, there's gotta be a way to make money on this. I just have no idea how. And so that was kind of the hinge point of like, maybe I should look into real estate. And I always thought it was an old man's game. I know that sounds cliche, but like, like the old people have like a couple rental properties. Like nobody young does that. That was like my mindset when I inherited the house. So,
all right. So what do you find? Right? Is this bigger pockets? Like what do you turn
bigger
to and
pockets.
where? Yep.
Yeah. I found bigger pockets, and I remember distinctly like I posted on there, and I think like a couple people responded, and I ended up, Scanlon actually was the first person to ever talk to me about real estate. He's like, I'd be happy to come over. And I was like, I'll pay you for your time. I need some guidance. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. I was like, and this is a huge asset. So I'm like, I don't want to screw it up. You know what I mean? This was like a point in my head where I'm like, I could really do this to create like the next step in my future. I cannot screw this up. And so Scanlon came over, and the way Scanlon will introduce me sometimes to people is we had a 2-hour conversation. Sean was committed, and I sent him photos of me ripping out the entire kitchen cabinets the same day that he spoke to me. So like 2-3 hours later that night, I literally started ripping out the kitchen cabinets, and I was like, I'm going to do this completely, 100%.
Well, what did Mike say to you then? That's got to be some.
He
There's
basically
money behind the walls.
Yeah. No,
You
my
can look
grandparents, I
like
wouldn't be
me
surprised.
if you do this.
I don't know if I could ever look like an Adonis like Michael Scanlon, but
We'll link to him in the show notes.
but yeah, so he basically said like, look, you seem like a disciplined and driven kid. If you want to be successful, like I would flip this. And I told him, I was like, I don't know what that is. And so he kind of explained it, and he's like, if I was in your position, that's what I would do. I would flip this. And I'm like, so does that mean like I just take apart the whole house and like fix it? And he's like, yes. I was like, that sounds horrifying. I'm in. I'm like, okay. So that's literally it. I literally had no background in construction, no knowledge of anything regarding like homes or GC knowledge or like what to do, what not to do. Nothing. Went in completely blind.
What was the condition of the house?
So the family liked to say it was worth like 120, 130, but it got appraised at 70. It was 1,100 and some change square feet on a crawl space, and it was not in great shape. The plumbing was all copper, but it was ancient. Most of the stuff was not to code. Shocking, I know. The only redeeming thing was the electrical was solid, and the HVAC was solid. So that was like a huge thing. But otherwise, like, it was very old, very dated. Another fortunate minor thing is it was drywall, not plaster. Now that I know what I know, I'm so grateful that demo was not nearly as bad as it could have been. So, yeah.
The nice thing about the small homes, tough to lose $50K on something.
Yeah.
That's tough to get a $50K change order on something that's worth 70.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So
but like, all right. So Scanlon inspires you. You start busting cabinets that night. Mm-hmm. Cool, great, inspiring story. What happens the next morning, right? Like you got to put the pieces together and keep like.
Scanlon calls up and says, "I was just kidding."
Yeah,
panic set in.
Yeah, like, right. Like it's a legitimate like job. Like what happened? And you're working at the time.
I was, and then the next day I quit. So like, if anyone,
Why did you tell your boss? Like, did you tell him the truth? Like,
if anyone on the air wants to know that what my personality is like when it gets hard and difficult, I double down. So yeah, I literally went to my job, my boss, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm quitting." And he looks at me and he goes, "You're lying to me right now, right? Like, you're up for a promotion, and there's like all these other things that were on the table." And I'm like, "I quit." And he just, like, in his head, it made no sense, right? Like, I had all the cards on the table. I had a successful career. Like, I was moving forward and actually able to do things. And I realized, like, this was my opportunity. Like, it's kind of cliche, but like, you have one shot to make a change in your life, like that Eminem song, right? Like, I thought about that, and I'm like, this is a shot that I'll never get again. Like, I know I will never have this opportunity. If I don't fully commit to this, then I will regret this for the rest of my life. And so I walked away from my full-time W-2 day one.
that's so opposite of the episode that came out today. Was like how you can be a successful real estate investor and keep your W-2 for 10 years.
Yeah, or quit 8 hours after talking to Mike Scanlon.
Like, these are great, dude.
Mike has a way with words.
So
W-2
this is nuts. You went to bed that night going like, screw it, I'm out.
Yeah. I legitimately was like, you've spent your entire career figuring out and solving other people's problems. It's time that you get your stuff together and commit to your own problems and do something that really matters. Like, he gave this to you, honor it. And so I kind of like, it was a very like, as much as it was a physical change for me, like walking away from the W-2 and like what I was used to doing, it was also a very stark mental change for me, because that was like a moment for me where I'm like, your grandfather grew up during the Depression, survived the war. He gave you something, go use it, go fix it. Don't squander this. So
Yeah, that's a great mentality. Also, I'm going to put a like logic hat on here. Like, your basis right now on the property is 0, right? It's hard to get under here. Like, you have a lot of leg room to make mistakes.
100%. And there was a lot of mistakes that were made.
Let's hear them.
Yeah,
lay them out.
So I would say
I want to fast forward real quick. Did you ever at some point go back to your boss and say, "So about that job"? Did we ever get to that
once.
point? All right,
never. I had. So I'll fast forward a little bit. I had $7 in my bank account at one time, and I had to make a choice in my head. Whether I was going to commit to it. So I took out a $10,000 payday loan and said, I will never go back. And so and if there's any consideration of like people who are listening to this, don't do that. Horrible idea. Would not recommend. But that was like my mindset at the time of like, you've risked all these things. You've done all this crazy stuff in your life. It's time to like double down and figure it out. Like, don't go back. And so I didn't.
Dude, that's nuts. All right, so let's talk about the mistakes. What happened here?
So
also, let's talk about like, okay, I need to do drive. Like, are you just on YouTube? Like, what's the learning path?
It was I'm gonna rip this out, and then that was as far as my thought process went. And then I was like, oh, I gotta put stuff up. I should probably figure out how to do that. So that's literally what I did. Was I demoed like a good portion of the kitchen shortly after I realized. It would be great if you had an oven and countertops to eat off of.
You're living there.
Yeah, I'm living there. So like there all the drive, zero forethought, like none whatsoever. Right? I was like just super committed, overly eager, and a lot of mistakes were made. So like I just didn't think about it. Right? Like I remember I took the toilet out and then really quickly was like, oh, bad idea. Put the toilet back, And so like, it was an adventure to say the least. Yeah.
All right, so the actual construction, like at some point, do you put a budget together, or is it just flying by the seat of your pants?
I legitimately, I wish I could tell you, like I had I have my MBA from, like wherever school, Booth School, business, whatever. No, there was no spreadsheet. There was no keeping track of expenses. It was, I'm flying by the seat of my pants, and whatever it takes to finish this house and sell it before December 24th or 5th or whatever. Like I was like right around Christmas is when I wanted it sold. Like it had to be together and sold by that date. That was the number in my head.
What month were you at? What was that?
I was in mid-June.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it was like, as Scanlon put it, ambitiously aggressive, but possible. So yeah, it was a rough time. I was tested physically, financially, emotionally, and mentally. I made a lot of mistakes in my personal life and a lot of mistakes on the property, but it was the single most growth I would say I've had as an adult man in 6 months, I think almost ever. So
what did you hire anyone?
Yes. So,
okay, so
I hired I hired a guy, I would call him a GC, but he wasn't licensed, and a guy of a guy knew this guy, and you can probably imagine where it's going to end up. But
so how much did you lose?
So he stole $7,000. Yeah. So so it was, I worked with him, and I was like, if he can teach me some of this stuff, I'll make a little bit of money. I'll work with him, and I'll learn the skill, right? It didn't really work out that way. In my head, it was like, it made a lot more sense, but I figured out fairly quickly that he wasn't really honest. He didn't really have the skills that he said he did. And I caught it quick enough where I kind of started separating myself, and then I made the mistake of paying him too soon. And he, took the money and off into Narnia, never to be seen or heard from again. And so that was also like a stark lesson for me, because at the time I think I had like $12,000 left, and I had a lot of stuff to do, and he sold 7. So I was like, this is bad. Like, we are in the danger zone. So that night I was like, we're taking out a $10K payday loan. We're sending it. So that's what I did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
I don't want to go there, but I almost want to hear the experience of walking into a pay. Like I've never done that.
It was literally 2 a.m. in the morning or like 1
Oh
a.m.
my
in the
gosh,
morning.
like, even gets better.
And I just like, I'm sitting there and I'm like my heartbeat is like 1,000 miles a minute, right? And I'm like, you said you're going to commit to this, and like at the time I wasn't in a great state mentally, but I also didn't have a great relationship with my partner at the time. And I didn't have a great relationship with my parents at the time. And I just felt like I was on an island. I was running it solo. And when you're on an island and you're by yourself, you have to carve SOS in the sand by yourself. There's no one else on the island but you. So that's what I did. And so I got the money. It was like wired to me, I think ACH like next day or something. And I literally took that money and I was like onward. Like I didn't pursue him. I didn't chase him. I just thought in my head, I'm like, just forget about it and figure out next steps. I figured out a couple things. I hired somebody who was a GC, and I didn't know what a GC was at the time. So they took advantage of me. And it took me a while to not see them as a mentor, but see them as somebody who kind of exploited me, to be honest. And so they helped connect me with a lot of subs to get some of the projects done that I couldn't do. So like, I didn't really know how to do plumbing. I'm red-green colorblind, like really red-green colorblind. So electrical was a nightmare for me. So like they helped me with small
Not
electrical
funny, but
work.
hilarious.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My friends, it's like the running inside joke. Like everyone says Christmas is 50 Shades of Grey for me because I can't see anything. So yeah, but it was a learning experience.
How much for the payday loan? What's the terms of that?
Like a weekly interest rate, right?
It was a monthly interest rate,
Yeah.
and it was like 28%, 29%. It was something ridiculous. Like I literally, in my head, I was like, you have literally probably 3 months of runway before this buries you. So
How'd you have to give car title? Like what you have to do?
So I basically put everything that I had in my bank account, and I put my car on it and the house.
yeah.
Yeah. I was like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any financial guidance, right? And like, I knew it wasn't a good decision, but I also knew I didn't really have a lot of options. So I was like, if you can run this for 3 months, you can get it done. You can figure it out. And fun story, we finished it under 3 months. So, and by we, I mean mostly me.
I want to pause right here. Like
Yeah.
one, like this determination is incredible, but I also want to make it crystal clear to everyone listening, like, don't do this.
Absolutely.
we are not advocating for you to do this. Like,
Yeah, if I could like say to people like, don't ever put yourself in a position like I did where you are literally inches away from total financial annihilation for months at a time. So it's literally like you think about it every single day. Like I woke up and I went to bed thinking if you make a couple financial mistakes, your life is over. You're crippled. Congratulations.
Is this ramen noodles time? Like, are you really that's being scrappy?
Yes.
and,
doesn't
like,
got a stove.
that's what I was thinking. Like,
Yeah. I was peanut butter jelly sandwiches. I made this dish that an ex's mom whipped up like years and years before, like when I was in college. And it was literally just noodles with like pepitas, which are pumpkin seeds, and some cheese and some like red hot chilies. And that was like what I ate. That like peanut butter and jelly, like ramen, like whatever was like the cheapest thing that I could possibly make into like multiple meals. That's what I did. Yeah.
All right, so we get to the finish line, right? Like we get through all this, it's done. It sells pretty quickly. Like, well, how's the disposition go?
This was a Scanlon moment. I got to give him credit where it was due. I wanted 250, and he's like, do you trust me? That was the first thing he said. And I was like, yes, I trust you. He built that, he built that rapport. Like, honestly, like he did, like he gave me some really good guidance along the way, and he helped me just enough to like, hey, don't do this. This will go worse. And it got better. And so I said, yeah, I trust you. And he's like, we're going to list it at 225. I'll get you 250. And I was like, for those of you who know Michael Scanlon, you're like, that's a Scanlon moment. Like that's kind of his personality. That's who he is, right? And so I trusted him. We listed at 225. Highest and best was in 72 hours, I think, and we closed at 250.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
All right, so now kind of like you made it through the gauntlet, like life.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden,
How did inspection? Inspection went good and all that, right? Like,
yeah, everything passed, which
right.
is like me thinking about it was wild because like I mean like obviously I had like windows and roofing done and like some siding done stuff, but like basically everything in the house, short of like some of the plumbing and some of the electrical, I did myself. I didn't know how to do almost anything, and I just, hey, congratulations, you're gonna learn today, YouTube University, and that's what I did. And it's like I'll go off on a slight tangent here. I hate when people say they can't do something. Like you're making an excuse for yourself. Like, let's call it what it is and be honest. Like, there is no reason in the age of social media that you cannot figure out how to do something. You're choosing to avoid really difficult problems because it's going to be super uncomfortable figuring it out.
yeah, there you go. Well put. We got our teaser, Lance. You taking notes over there.
there's a few teasers here. I saw you writing down over there. Like,
All right, so you get to the finish line, money in the bank account now.
Yeah.
Still not back at the job, right? Now.
No.
All right.
are you like ready to like never go back to a job again? Are you thinking like this is a thing?
I'm thinking like, okay, you have more money than you've ever had in your entire life. Panic sets in. Now what? Because I'm still not that financially literate, so I just have a larger risk portfolio. You know, like
It's just a liability.
Yeah, yeah, you know, and it's like again, I didn't have the knowledge. You don't know what you don't know, and when you don't have a mentor and you don't know who to talk to about really difficult financial conversations, you make mistakes that you probably wouldn't make because you don't have the mentorship, you don't have the guidance, right? So basically, I was like, okay, I have a good amount of money. Now what am I going to do? I didn't have a backup plan. So I moved in with my ex at the time for a few months. We separated shortly after.
I was going to say real quick, did you know where you were going after you sold the place? Was it
I
enough
did.
for
Yeah.
Where am I sleeping tonight?
Yeah. So I knew I was going to move in with my ex, and I knew the relationship was on its out. So I was like, you're probably going to run this for like a couple months, so you better have a backup plan. And my backup plan was, hey, mom, assistance, please. So yeah, that was the backup plan, and that ended up being how it was. I took some time off. It was a sabbatical for, I'd say like 2 or 3 months. And I sought therapy at the time. And
we're like January Chicago here, right? We're gray,
we're
dark.
It was dark. It was grim. There's a picture I have from like years ago with me where I did like a 2 or 3 mile run in a blizzard, and it was on January 1st. And it was kind of for me to set the tone of like, you now have to figure out the next step in your life, and you have no guidance, but you have the capability. And that was like a shining moment for me. It was like the first time I would say in my adult life where I'm like, I unequivocally had belief in myself because now I had the proof that I could do what I say I did. And so that was a glaring moment for me. But yeah, I ended up moving in with my mom shortly after that, and I can kind of go into the next step of what happened.
So we're still into real estate, right? Like, are we?
Yeah.
Or is it like, oh, I never want to do this again?
So I was still into real estate, but I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And so I like kind of dabbled, try to like that guy who was, I thought of a mentor at the time, turned out not to be such. He was like pushing me to like commit more into real estate. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do, but I knew like at that point I was really burned out, just on like, I would say like on everything. I basically redlined myself through that flip. Like, to be completely honest, the last 3 months I was doing 15 to 17 hour days, 7 days a week. Like, it was nonstop from like start to finish. Whatever you need to do, you are working on the house or you're working in construction. Then you come home and you paint until 2 a.m. and then you wake up at 6 and you do it again. And it's like, that was what I did. So like my body, I think, was still coming down from that. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I didn't want to be a broker. I knew that. I'm like, I don't have any desire to do that. So I thought about like being an appraiser, being an inspector, and I couldn't really find any information on either. So that was like kind of as far as that went for that time.
Okay. So what happens, right? Like do you end up, I know you end up being an inspector. Is that I don't remember the chronological order here. Is that, did you buy the house hack first or no?
No, I got my inspector's license, but it was just before I bought the house hack. Like, there wasn't enough time for me to have like a really solid knowledge base to prevent a lot of the mistakes that would happen. So,
Let's go there. Let's go there. So So you haven't had enough of this real estate thing.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I had some intermediate like sales stuff in the middle of that, and every time I would come in really hot, I would close some larger deals. I'd put myself up on the scoreboard and start crushing for like a new person, and then I would leave shortly after. And I realized like, you're just not built to work for other people. You're not. Like, you're extremely successful at what you do when you put your mind to it, but eventually you realize like, if I'm selling 35,000 and I'm making 5 to 7%, like, why don't I make 25 and deal with more stress, like, and make it all mine, And so that was kind of what led me in, but still I was really adverse to being a broker, and that's kind of where I made the decision to be an inspector.
Okay. So you make the decision to be an inspector. In parallel, though, you're looking at properties.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you end up buying a 4-unit, 3-unit, 4-unit?
4-unit.
All right. Walk us through this now, because you just went through some, this is like PTSD here. Like,
Yeah, it
and
was
you're
dark.
like, all right, bring it back.
Yeah. It was dark. And for the people listening, like, understand that it took me therapy and it took me a legitimate amount of time, self-reflection, and a lot of discipline to recover like mentally from what I went through. Like, I wouldn't trade it for anything, but like, if you need the help and you understand you're starting to go off the rails, like, seek the help, right? Like understand and acknowledge like, hey, I can do this, but I need assistance, and light the beacon, right? But yeah, so I made the decision to pursue being an inspector, just because I felt like I didn't want to touch the sales thing. I think I was like a little bit adverse to that because I had just tried to force a square peg in a round hole, to be honest. And so I ended up meeting an inspector, working with him for a little while I was studying. And then in that position, I was looking for multifamily at the time.
Okay. All right. Around your area, right? Like,
yeah, I wanted to kind of stick around like the south suburbs, south side. That was like my comfort zone. I knew the area, and I knew like, if anything happened, I knew the area well enough where I could probably make some adjustments and like, at the very least, lose minimal money, like if I made a mistake, right? So,
okay. And right now, are you W-2'd with this inspector? Like, do you can actually get
Nope.
quote unquote normal financing?
Yeah. So at the time, I was working in automotive as a contract, basically for, I think, like a year or something like that. I think it was like 6 months to a year. And I had a W-2 at the time, and it was extremely difficult for me to do that, but I knew that they would not finance me if I didn't have a W-2. So I picked up a W-2. I don't know if that's great to say on air, but it is what it is.
I know a bunch of people that do that.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it was, you gotta know what you gotta know, right? Like, I understood enough to where, like, hey, they're gonna look at that. I should probably figure this out. All right, we'll
sure.
Run it out for as long as we need to run it out.
That's a strategy. Like that's too many people, they quit and then they think, oh yeah, that's right, I forgot, I can't get loans.
Yeah, and that was another procedure for me where, like, I thought just because I had some money, I was like good, and they're like, no, we're gonna go through your entire life to figure out what you're gonna get.
Yep. All right. So you get the W-2. You find a 4-unit in Blue Island.
Yep, I quit shortly after. Shocking, I know.
What attracted you to this?
So like, I had this thought in my head where I'm like, I'm willing to take on a larger challenge than almost anyone else, and I'm willing to eat more stuff, I should say, to build the value over time, where I can cash flow at a number that's going to set me up on like my first one, where I'm like, I'm not going to leave for 2 to 3 years. I'm going to fix as much as I possibly can. And I want it to cash flow really healthy. So I'm going to have to absorb like a lot of renovation, because I want to take something on that, at the very least, most investors wouldn't touch, because they knew it was going to be a little bit of a black hole.
So you had a couple $100,000 in the bank. Like, how much did you put down? How much was the purchase price? Like,
I put like $4,000 down.
Okay, so that's what I want to get at.
I got paid $50 at closing.
Okay.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I was I was starting to get sharper, as you can see. There was a little bit of a change in the mindset. So I started to know who to talk to, what questions to ask, and like where to go with my thought process. So I started to get a little sharper.
We can cut this if you want, but like, did you blow any of that money?
I blew a fuckload. Excuse me. Sorry, my bad.
No, that's fine.
Continue. What?
I blew a lot.
Okay.
Yeah. I would say I probably blew 50 to 75K.
Cars?
No, actually, I have a little side note that'll take 20 seconds. My dream car from a young age was a Nissan GTR. I actually went in and was looking at buying one in cash, and I don't want to say an epiphany, but it was like a deja vu moment where it just felt like that was the wrong decision to make. I'd never felt like that in my entire life. And so I walked out fully happy and content for the first time in my life, walking away from my dream car, which was a really big step for me. And then I took that money and put it into some crypto and some stocks. So yeah, I did okay. I did okay in the stock market and I did okay in crypto. I should have been a little bit better at like pulling profits, but I didn't lose money on that. So yeah.
All right. We still have some money in the bank though, right?
Yes. Yeah.
We got the W-2 to get you in here.
Yeah.
We get the building.
Yep.
All right. Sounds like we had a little bit of adventure on this one too.
Oh yeah. It was, if you think of like Hiroshima in 1945, that was probably what it was. It was brutal. I did a really good job on finding the right one where, it'll cash flow as long as you make the correct renovations. I inherited 3 tenants, which was bold from what I understand at the time. Everyone's like, you're taking on 3, like you're literally 3 question marks. And I've been fortunate. That was probably one of the redeeming qualities. I have solid tenants. One of them just moved out, a young guy, but he's solid. And so I was fortunate with that, but I've run into some seriously legitimate issues with like a GC that I hired who came recommended. And then I had some major issues with the village as well. So it's been difficult.
Well, isn't Blue Island notorious for, I don't know the area well, but isn't that one of those rental license and
rental license? You got every time someone moves out, you got to have them come through. That they've been going through the last few years, like making you like demo out the basement if there's just like any random like set of plumbing that could have been a 5th apartment somewhere down the road. Like, or back in.
And that's actually exactly what mine was. We had to demo it. We had to demo it before because I went FHA for it. So they had to demo it beforehand, but they were just like maniacal about like, there was like a piece of drywall that was still nailed to like one of the rafters and they threw a fit about it. And I'm just like, this is like absurd. Like this is pointless.
Yeah. So when is this at the sale point of inspection? Like when does the village get involved?
The village got involved shortly beforehand.
Because they have the inspection. At point of sale.
Yeah.
Point of sale inspection.
So they gave me a laundry list of stuff, and I felt pretty comfortable like tackling the majority of it. The problem is the village has this great ability to move the goalpost. So you think you have a 3-page list of like, okay, I have my plumbing here, my electrical here, like I'm gonna do reno here and here. And it's like, then they're like, hey, but hear me out. What if we just tack down a bunch of other stuff here? And they're not doing it for any other reason than, hey, we can. You should, use our people to take care of this for you.
We take a stab here. It wasn't on division, was it?
Shocking. Yes, it was. Yeah.
You know this one?
I don't remember that. It's just like 12224 or something like that.
It's close. Yeah. I won't give my address out live on air.
I know the seller of that property, actually.
Oh, do you? Yeah. He was out of state, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Wow. You could have warned him.
I don't think anyone...
Had you been listening to the podcast?
Well, the bathroom thing, like that couldn't have been like that's what like made me think about that. So 2 front, 2 back.
Yep.
I know that.
Yeah.
property.
No, that's awesome.
Garage in the back off the alley.
Yep.
Corner property. Property.
I will say, just to that point though of inspectors moving the goalposts, like we've had that a few times, and that's like the most infuriating thing. Like
it is.
You tell me to do this, I do it, and then no, now do this.
Yes.
And like you end up in this loop of like, how do we get out? Like what? I'm trying to do what you're telling me to do.
Well, it's starting to happen even more in the, we used to stay away from places like Blue Island for those reasons and like preach like Schaumburg. But now even like Schaumburg, a lot of these cities, Schaumburg, Hoffman, they're outsourcing their building departments. So when,
that guy gets paid by the trip then, right?
Yeah.
Right. So he has all the incentive in the world if he's a third party to want to come as many times as possible.
For us now, like it's like, all right, you got to change out these 2 GFCIs and you got to get a permit for it too. So you go get the permit for it, you get the 2 GFCIs, and then they come out and they fail you because like, you got to do this, this, and this, and this, and things the first guy missed, but then the second guy comes back off the permit, and then they nail you for a bunch more stuff. So it's getting bad in all suburbs.
Yeah, that's exactly what Blue Island did. Like, and because I didn't have the experience, right? Like, I didn't know that the sledgehammer was coming at my head because I was looking right and the sledgehammer was coming left, right? So, and plus, like, at that time, I had just gotten my inspector's license. And even though I was, like, fresh and green, I would say I still had a pretty above average knowledge because of all the studying that I'd done, and I'd done probably 50 shadow inspections at the time. Like I was pretty serious about it. Like I was doing that full time and I was making money on the side doing side jobs. So it was really important to me to like learn the trade and craft. And some of the stuff that they would say like, oh, this is wrong, I would know for a fact in ICC code, you're wrong. Like this is correct. You're literally telling me something's wrong because you assume that I won't know that it's wrong and it's right. And so, you know,
but that's double-edged sword there.
Yeah.
You have to make a decision. I'd rather be rich than be right.
And I promise you, me and them went at it pretty difficult a couple times. I try not to pick fights, right? Like I don't want to argue with people. I did that enough when I was a kid, right? Like I'm an adult now. I'd avoid that. But the reality is when someone just does something like so rude and off-putting and like tries to put you up against a wall, sometimes you need to respond. And I did that a few times. And, you know, like people who know me and who know the story like more intimately can tell you like they would have cars parked down the street to watch to see if I would have anyone moving any sort of material, anyone who looked like a contractor. Like my grass was dead. I remember that first year when I got it, the grass was completely dead. Like it was a heat wave and I got a fine for like $500 because my grass was too high. And if you look at the grass, they're like, oh, it's over 5 inches. We measured it. It was dead. It was completely dead. It was like 2.5 inches, like completely. And I know because I went out there with a ruler and measured it. Like, you know, it's just like you get those kind of things, right? And it's because you're not playing ball. And it's like, we're going to force you to play our game. And I'm like, bet. Absolutely bet. You pick the right one because I'm the one. And I would just go at it with them. So,
man, so where are we at with this building now? Like,
so one of the units is completely renovated. One of them is in the process of being fully renovated. And I've fixed $40,000 to $50,000 in assorted things that have broken on the building. Water heater, the entryway where like, you know, you have
most
5 steps in a platform.
Like this was the original budget.
Yeah, 100%. Now I was fortunate enough where I had kind of thought it through of like, I know I'm going to have to spend some money because it's old. I was not fully prepared. Like, I think I was like, I'll spend at most 20 grand my first year. And I like doubled that. And that's like, you know, a word of caution, like don't underestimate the quality of a good inspection and don't underestimate the value that it brings. Because if I had known the knowledge that I know now, it's not that I wouldn't have bought the building, but I would have bid it way lower. And so that was a learning moment for me.
I'll double down there. Don't underestimate liquidity. Liquidity solves all issues. Like we
100%.
joked about going to payday the first one, but like you're 10 grand away from not having 250K on the first deal.
Yeah.
Right. Liquidity can solve all problems. Right. It's not awesome, but it's always it's a great backstop.
In my experience, I think those are 4-2-1s, right? Mm-hmm. The smaller, the multi-unit, 4-unit 2-1s that are outdated, where it doesn't have everything up, like plumbing and electrical and, you know, even plaster, like, man, those kill you on maintenance more so, and you have far less income coming in than if you had even just a 2-flat that's bigger with 3-1 or 3-2 or something like that. So
100%.
Yeah, agreed. There's an extreme emphasis that I put on if I can buy a vacant building or a building that I know I can come in and gut it and get rid of the boiler. Like the tangible dollar amount changes from deal to deal, but like it's a huge benefit to me. Like it's a huge to not have to displace tenants and not have to deal with the boiler, just let me get in there and do my thing. Like I will not overpay, but I will pay a premium to go and do the game plan.
Yeah, because everything we've ever gone way over budget on is things like, oh man, all we gotta put is 10 grand in. Like it's a good deal.
Nope.
It's okay paying a little more. And you go in, all of a sudden it's like, let's open, let's do this. Let's do this. Like that's not really our flooring, and we got to replace that one piece, so let's replace all. So before you know it, you're way into it more than you want. But maintenance for the things that we've gutted out or did call it to 80% gut rehab, like maintenance is next to nothing compared to the ones that you go in there and you kind of just put some lipstick on and you get nickel to dime on maintenance.
Mm-hmm. Yep. How you're living there now, right?
Yeah.
What's if you were to move out, would this thing break even? Would it make a little bit of money?
Cash flow well.
Rent's probably gone up pretty good there.
Yeah. I didn't increase rent massively for my tenants because they're very good. They pay on time. They don't bother me, and that's worth something to me. So I'm not raising rents to market, but I know that if I moved out, I would cash flow minimum probably $1,000 a month. Could be higher depending on like some things. But if I finish this other unit, which should be done probably in the next month, if we moved out, I would cash flow like roughly 1,500 plus. So,
Okay. All right. So we have a happy ending here, right? Like this
for the most part, yeah.
All right. So what else, right? Like you said earlier, you said like, all right, I'm not going to be a broker. I don't want to be sales.
Yeah.
I know you are a broker. So.
Yeah.
So something happened there.
Yeah. So I spent a good amount of time doing inspection, just under a year. I would say like 9 to 12 months, like in that range. I looked at, with one inspector, I think like 60 properties. And then I think with the other, I think it did like 110. And that was really good for me, but it was a shining moment of like, I really had this mindset of like, I wanted to build something for myself. And being an inspector, like you can make good money being an inspector if you're skilled, but you can't scale it. It's an extremely difficult business to scale. And I started getting around more people who are like more business oriented, right? And I started thinking about like, if I build a business, how am I going to build it to make more money? What's going to be the most efficient way that I can spend time to build this business and to build capital, to build a portfolio, or to build a business the right way? And it just became glaringly apparent that I'm like, trying to scale this type of business would be very, very difficult and impossible. And so like, it was a moment for me where like, I had to realize like, maybe inspection is not the way to go. Like you like it, but maybe you should consider being a broker. And at that time I had talked to Scanlon a little bit, and then I talked to another guy on the team, Tim, and we had basically had some conversations back and forth separate, but like, you know, I was just asking him questions about what it's like being a broker day to day, how you build your portfolio using money from like deals, and like how it functions, how it flows. And it just, more and more time that passed, the more I learned about it, the more I felt like I could utilize my background as an inspector and my skills in sales to absolutely crush as being a broker. And so like, I talked to Scanlon at one point and I was like, hey, you want me to come on? I don't have my license yet. And he's like, all right, go get it. So less than a month later, I went and got my license and basically became a broker. And I'm with the Axon Group now under Scanlon and Fugman. And I enjoy it. I really do. I frankly didn't think I would enjoy it this much.
But man, you have such a gift to give to whatever version you were when you first started. Like, because between the inspection, between all of the pain that you went through, like, man, I mean, I'll be very right. Like 90% of real estate brokers have no clue of 10% of
numbers
of,
higher
of
than that.
Whatever it might be. I would say 10% are investment minded. But man, like that's what you have to offer to the world, man. Like that's bigger than anything else you give out there, and you give it to your version of yourself to other people.
Yeah, and I'd like to say like there's some people along the way who I want to give credit to. So like I'll give credit to Scanlon, Tim Kavanaugh with the Axon Group. Paul, who's a plumber for P&L Service, Joe Zilkowski with On Target Home Inspection. There's some other people, like I have plumbers, I have electricians, like my buddy Kuba. Like these people were the people that gave me the capability to solve problems on the fly that most people would have cracked and said, screw it, we're selling the building, we'll cut our losses and we're out, and like we'll go do something else. Like I doubled down, and that's like, these are the type of people where like I am genuinely grateful. I also have to give a huge shout out to my fiance, Noelle. Her patience with me when I'm in the furnace, dealing with the village, dealing with trying to get my broker's license, having a lot of people saying you shouldn't do this, or, you know, like you're struggling constantly. It's like when you have a partner who accepts you and understands who you are and is willing to let you kind of really stick yourself in the furnace to like create the iron. I don't think the capability of that can be genuinely understated. Also, as you progress farther, you meet people like you guys, right, who are much larger staples in the community, and the podcast gives people the platform to learn the knowledge so that they don't make the mistakes I did, right? And that in and of itself is a huge value.
See, we should wake up and keep doing this.
Man, you sounds like you just accepted an award, dude. I love that. Like that was great. Like it's like the Oscars here.
I'm grateful, man. Like I come from the attitude of gratitude. Like I don't take any of this for granted. Like when I was a kid, like I don't want to get too much into it, but I was told you probably won't make it past 21, right? And now here I am at 30 on a hugely successful real estate podcast in an industry that I love with, the woman that I am super grateful to have, with really strong friends, really happy with the people that are around me in the contracting space. And like, dude, I'm grateful. Like, my life could have turned out a bunch of different ways, but I just stuck it out and I just made it. And it's like, I can't speak on it enough, that the gratitude that I have to be in this industry, in this space. I'm truly grateful.
Well, you also earned it, right? Like, there's 200 different decision points where you could have quit, right? Like, there's a lot
That's
of
fair.
Like, right, like you've absolutely earned to be here. We're going, so that's awesome. Going back to the brokerage, like, I know you're kind of brand new here. What's the day-to-day like?
So I do some decent amount of cold calling. I do a decent amount of like just networking and prospecting. I'm on Facebook quite a bit, and like, go ahead.
Real quick for cold calling, because we have new agents listening, we have new investors listening. Who are you targeting? Like, let's get a little tactical.
Foreclosure list, 110%. I use Redx, I think it's called. And it's like, I come from that sales background, right? You don't sell, you don't eat. So if you're bad, you drown. But if you're good, you build yourself a yacht. And that's the difference. Like, I would tell any agent, like, if you're hungry, you got to ask yourself, how committed are you to grinding for your first year? And just quitting doesn't exist. It doesn't. Because if it does, you're in the wrong industry. Go quit, leave. And I would encourage that, because the people who will stick it out will be able to give their clients a level of value that a part-time agent never will. Like, I've been through the fire and furnace plenty of times, right? Obviously going through the podcast and listening to the story, and I could have quit, like you said, 100 times. I've made the decision that this is the industry that I'm going to park my life in the next 10 to 20 years. And so for those type of agents who are committed to this, where it's not just about the money, it's about helping the next generation of investors. It's about networking, meeting people, and building yourself into the thing that you want to be. Doing those things as a broker is really like where my passion lies. And I think like my value proposition for those people is that of like, hey, I've done multifamily. Hey, I've done a flip, and I've started working a lot more with like contractors. And like just recently, if I could expand on it, I did, there was a buddy of mine, Tim, he had an out-of-state investor, right? And the out-of-state guy was like, I need a contractor and I need to figure this out. And like, I'm thinking about selling it, but I might not sell it. So Tim's like, hey, can you go walk it? And like, he'll ask me a lot of like the technical and mechanical questions because of my background. So I went and did it. And I just basically like project managed it to get the commission, you know what I mean? To where like when we list it, we'll split it and whatnot. And it's like, that's something where like you have to network, you have to have that relationship, but you also have to have the knowledge and like, dude, put in the work. Like I put in probably 100 hours with that collectively over the course of like a couple months before we get to the point where it's like listed, and then, like maybe we get an offer, right? Like it went up a couple days ago. But the point I'm trying to make is like the sales cycle is not short, it's long. And so you have to be patient. You have to focus on the client experience and interaction. And if you're not, and you don't have a good value proposition, you're going to struggle.
That's great stuff. So are we going to make a jump in 6 months, or do you think like brokerage is where it's going to be for you?
I really think brokerage is where I want to be. Like, of course I've thought about like interest in appraisal, interest in like GC stuff. And like, I've really dabbled and like really wanted to build my knowledge base. But as a general rule, I have no desire to walk away from being a broker. I absolutely love what I do. And I think like that value proposition is pretty solid of like my technical background. If you're out of state and you're struggling, like you want somebody like not necessarily who will project manage it, but like I can connect you with contractors that have worked on my own stuff. And I can tell you from personal experience, their work's good, because I'm finicky and I complain a lot about contractors because I'm an inspector. It's what we do, right? It's our existence. We're the bane of contractors' existence. So, like I like to take that, and it's like you have to have that value proposition, right? Like if you're going to stick in being a broker, how many brokers are there? A lot. So like what makes you unique, right? So,
yeah. Dude, we had a lot here. Mark, anything else before we wrap?
No, we got to wrap off that. You can't even say anything more after that. Final note.
All right, let's do it.
All right. What's your competitive advantage? How have you been able to do this while so many other people listening wish they had the drive and determination you have?
I would say my competitive advantage is I never quit, and I'm very value selective about the people I surround myself with. So anyone that I make an introduction to, I want you to know personally that I have worked with them directly, and their results speak for themselves. My value proposition is that if you need help, I can help you, and I have a very solid technical background.
Yep. What's the one piece of advice you would tell someone yet to buy their first property here in the Chicagoland area?
Be comfortable struggling for your first year if you make some mistakes. Give yourself grace and be grateful that you have the opportunity to learn from social media like this to get better at an industry that is ever changing.
Good answer.
Yeah, that was pretty good. What do you do for fun?
I'm a little bit of a sadist. I like running, so that's kind of my thing.
All right. What's a good book, podcast, or self-development activity you'd recommend to our listeners?
So I would say 2 books, very different, but both very helpful to me. I would say the first one is Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins.
Yep.
I break up because that was a really important book to help me. And then the other one for principles is A Book of 5 Rings. It's by a legendary samurai, and he basically outlines the principles of being a warrior. And I think it's very transitional in those principles to live a grounded but strong and dictated life.
I don't know that one. I knew the
I read
Goggins
that
one.
That's good. It was a while ago, but I read that one. You got 5 rings and you got 6 rings. Or the other one. What's the other ring? 7 rings. Phil Jackson one?
Yeah.
Ariana Grande, 7 Rings.
That's funny in itself. But all right. Besides yourself, name a valuable resource you'd recommend to other Chicago investors. You already labeled off some of them, but
Yeah, so I would say probably I'll say a couple, right? Like first one would be Kevin Caspers. He's my lender as a senior vice president at Federal Savings. It's been super helpful with me, really educating me on the loan process. And then I would say Joe from On Target Home Inspection, Paul from P&L Services, and then I would say also like I don't know him personally really, but Carlos Aparicio from Aparicio Law. They helped me get through my deal, sell my first one, and they've helped multiple clients of mine. Super good law office.
awesome.
All right. Well, we've got a lot to link to there. So appreciate you
Thank
dropping
you.
some names. All right. Sean, this has been an awesome episode. You provide a ton of value, a ton of stories. Is there any way our listeners can provide value to you, and how can they find you?
So yeah, I mean, you can reach out through the Axon Group on the website. Just reach out to me. I'm on the Axon website. Just look at my phone number. Shoot me a text. Give me a call. If you feel like you're an out-of-state investor and you need value or you have questions, like I'm willing to take it. I don't mind providing value to somebody or answering some questions if you have questions and you feel like you need them answered before we go out and do something. Like I don't need any of that. I want to genuinely build and help this community because I plan on being here in 10 years and eventually I'd like to sit in your seat. So if somebody needs help, I'll help you.
All right.
All right.
Chicago Fact. Who are we playing for? Who's sponsoring?
Our sponsor today, Kaiser Group, and we are playing for Tiana Blankenship, who left us a review on iTunes. So, Tiana, thank you.
I hope it was a good review.
Yeah, I know, it's definitely. All we have is 5-star reviews on iTunes, so I'm very proud of that.
Banger.
There
right.
better not be a jerk out there.
Yeah.
Tiana, if myself or Sean get this right, you get $50 gift
Some
card.
inspector from Blue Island's listening right now.
$50 gift
Sean.
card brought to you by Kaiser
Panics.
Group.
All right, we're gonna stay on that. We're gonna stay on that Blue Island riff, though.
Okay.
Blue Island. I didn't realize this. It borders or touches 8 different suburbs or municipalities. Can you name? You're from there, so I'm gonna say, can you name 6 of them between
boy.
the two of you guys?
You got all those rinky dink like Phoenix. I don't know if
I'll give you 5.
Harvey, Phoenix.
No.
No.
0 for 2.
Chicago,
Chicago. Morgan Park touches it. Yeah.
Calumet Park,
Yes.
Riverdale,
Yes.
South Holland.
No.
No.
Your flip was in one of them.
I said Harvey, right?
Said yeah, Harvey's not
I
it.
said Elson.
You said Alsip?
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sorry.
You
got
said
4.
no.
You have Alsip, Chicago, Calumet Park.
You would think I'd be better at this.
Oakland?
right?
No.
No.
Corner of it, Phoenix.
You could probably Robbins.
Robbins. I think I get you to 5.
Stickney?
No.
No. That's
There's another
proactive.
P1, not Phoenix.
Pills. No. Posen.
Yes.
Posen, yeah.
All right, you're definitely over now. You still had Riverdale, Dixmoor,
I
and
said Riverdale.
well, I was listening to Sean. Did you really say Riverdale?
Yeah,
All right.
for sure.
All right, you guys nailed it. And then Midlothian.
I would have.
On
I
like
completely
7
forgot.
o'clock, like the
Yeah.
southwest. All right, good job.
All right.
Definitely qualifies.
All right, Tiana, you get a $50 gift card brought to you by today's sponsor, Kaiser Group.
Man, great episode. Rough ending here. Let's land this plane.
Oh man! All right. Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Tom. Listeners, leave us a review. We want you to be on here for the Chicago Fact, and then also we want more reviews. So help us. The more reviews we have, the more we can reach more investors like yourself. So don't feel bad about referring us to your investor group as well too. So, Sean, thank you. Tom, thank you. Listeners, we'll see you next week.
Thanks all.